So we've been reading Letters from the Lighthouse and we are on page 141 if you're following along with me. I think reading aloud plays a really important role in reading for pleasure because I think it does several different things. I think it models how we read as readers, things like your expression and, you know, stopping to find something funny or stopping to wonder about something or try and guess what's going to happen next. And I think it's important to model those behaviours to the children, but also to get them to join in with you. We were at the bit where Olive thought they were going to erase the lighthouse. What were they actually going to do? And then she felt a little bit silly about it afterwards. What were they actually doing, Florin? I think also it creates a real sense of community, and I think reading aloud offers that in a way that I don't think many other things do, to have that real shared experience together and to do that with high quality text that then I sort of picture it as like a bit of a trickle-down effect. So I might start off by sharing it and then hopefully, and then a few days later, I might see a child reading that with somebody else. And then they might take that book home to share that with their brothers and sisters. Or then they might sort of actually start passing it round because they all want to read it. And I think it's that reading aloud is the springboard for all of that other things to happen. And I think it's just such a valuable time as a class to really develop that social reading community. I nodded eagerly. Probably a bit too eagerly. I also then choose particularly novels, but picture books as well, that might stretch and challenge them. So particularly our sort of, what we call our class reader, which is the book that we read every day. It's normally a novel, but not always. I generally try and pitch it just above what they'd be able to read on their own. So it's something that's going to challenge and stretch them and that we can sort of unpick together and read together. I couldn't take my eyes off Ephraim's envelope. The children play an important part in reading aloud, I think, because I'm trying, and I would say that this is something that's in progress at the moment, trying to encourage the children to read aloud to each other in our reading time, but also to sort of share with the whole class maybe an excerpt of something that they're reading or a few pages of what they've read recently, because I think that then makes it not an us and them thing. It's not then, well, Miss Thompson reads aloud, but we don't because we are children. I think it needs to be sort of a reciprocal thing, just like when you make book recommendations. I don't want it to always be me recommending to them. It needs to be a two-way thing, really.
The tall trees watched as they hurried on, but ahead was a swarm of great big mosquitoes.
I think reading aloud in my classroom takes many different forms. I think sometimes it is me reading to them with no interruption, because actually to interrupt that book would cut the flow, and I think sometimes too many interruptions you sort of go, well, I've forgotten what was happening in the first place now anyway, all I know is what question you were asking me. So I think sometimes you want to keep the flow going so it's right not to interrupt. Other times I think it is important to interrupt, but as a reader. So it's not going, I've got my assessment checklist here, we are working on this, therefore I must ask them 3 questions about this assessment content domain or whatever. I think it's more about going, actually, if I was reading this myself, I would stop to think about that word and what it means and why it's important. Or at this point, I would be thinking, what's going to happen next? So I get them to stop and talk to each other about what will happen next. So I think it's about doing it as a reader rather than doing it as an assessment.